Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Scotland has a little bit of a justice problem. There's a man convicted of an appalling crime who's now lodging an appeal. One of the problems they have, of course, is that this man dressed up as a woman to commit a crime that would never have happened had he just simply been dressed as a man. And this goes against what the SNP and the Greens are trying to push, saying that, pretendy Wendy's don't represent any kind of threat. Whereas in the case of Andrew Miller, for it is he absolutely does represent a threat. And dressing as a woman is the only reason this crime actually happened. And so can they be seen to be wanting to give an appeal to him to allow him to reduce his sentence, which will then only strengthen the calls that this should not be allowed? Or do they want the problem to simply disappear and not allow him to have an appeal, which then strengthens the calls to say that this thing should be allowed to happen? It's a very, very weird position to be in. Regardless of the result, the SNP and their calls that pretendy Wendy's don't mean a threat are seen to be wrong. They're either going against public opinion or they're softening the law. Either way, it's not going to be good. We'll take a look at this, see what's going on and see why Andrew Miller should be locked up for the rest of his life, and hopefully it should be a short one. Here goes. Now this is the problem they have. If Andrew Miller is allowed to appeal his sentence and is given leeway to do so, then it will be seen that dressing as a woman simply to commit a sex crime is seen as somehow less dangerous as just dressing as a man to commit the same crime. In which case, of course, the optics are terrible. The SNP are looking that they're saying that simply allowing men to dress as women is more allowable in law. And it means that men who dress as women can therefore commit these acts knowing that they'll get less of a sentence. On the other hand, if he loses an appeal and he's not given a reduction in sentence, it's acknowledging the very fact that what the judge said was that by dressing as a woman enabled him to do this crime, and therefore that increases the likelihood that people will see trans people as being sexual offenders. If you're the SNP Green government and you're looking at this case, which way are you coming down? It's a difficult one, isn't it? But of course, it's exactly what we said would happen all along. Trans people do represent a greater threat. This is borne out by the government's own figures. Trans people in prison are 10 times more likely to be there for sexual offences. They're not safe people, generally. We're not talking about the individuals, but statistically, they're 10 times more likely to be, sex offenders. And therefore, you need to be aware of this. There's no getting around. This isn't a matter of opinion. This is a matter of governmental statistical fact. And so we shouldn't, of course, allow the likes of Andrew Miller, who did almost terrible things to this child, and a child who, after 27 hours, managed to escape. And that's very unusual because normally, after 27 hours, the child would have been dead. That's how these people work. These people, in this case, being peds. But of course, it's exactly the sort of thing that the SNP are trying to push. It's all part of their policy to soften the crime, to soften the people that do it, and to make us feel more in sympathy with a man like this. And I do hope he got that black eye in custody. Anyway, trans Butcher, who abducted and sexually abused a Scots schoolgirl, has been given leave to appeal his sentence. I hope the appeal judge make it even harsher, because I think that the sentence he got was exceptionally mild. The Court of Appeal in Edinburgh confirmed on Friday that Andrew Miller has been granted leave to appeal against the sentence, and the appeal hearing will take place on December the 5th. Now, I'm also going to suggest that that appeal is only going through for one reason. It's not necessarily that they want him to get off light or anything like that. It is, however, because Lady Haldane is hearing a case about whether trans men, weird mentally ill men, can really pretend to be women and then be treated by the rest of us who have to join in the lies and the pretense and treat them as women. her case is going through. Now, of course, if this case stands, she has to, by law, take that into effect. By allowing this petition to go through for an appeal, she can say, well, I took it in at the law at the time. We couldn't accept that one because it was under appeal and therefore could not be included in the deliberations. And I think that is the only reason that this case has been pushed forward. It's so that Lady Haldane can come down and force us all to pretend that these men are women. But of course, it makes no difference. We've got the 2010 Equality Act on our side, where, of course, we are protected on our philosophical beliefs. And it is my deeply held philosophical belief that someone born male is male, and I will continue to treat them as male and call them male. And there's nothing they can do because the 2010 Equality Act gives me that right to do so. But, of course, this is all part of the process. And so this appeal has been allowed to go through so that it gives Lady Haldane an out, and she doesn't have to accept that men who pretend to be women are a threat to children. We know they all are. However, it's a legal matter. Anyway, a PD who abducted a young girl as she walked home and sexually abused her for 27 hours has been granted leave to appeal his sentence. Andrew Miller, 53, who also uses the name Amy George, was dressed as a woman when he offered the primary school-aged child, whom he'd never seen before, a lift in February. He took the girl back to his house in the Scottish borders and subjected her to repeated attacks, which a judge described as every parent's worst nightmare. At the High Court in Edinburgh last month, Miller was handed a 28-year extended sentence, comprising of 20 years behind bars and a further 8 years on licence under supervision in the community. And we know that under supervision is meaningless. We've seen people, and we've done videos on people who were allegedly under supervision and then went on to commit more terrible crimes. So under supervision is pointless. Let's just not make it a fit 28-year sentence. Let's give him the rest of his life in prison. And let us do it in such a way that the guards are often missing. And leave it at that. Anyway, at the same court in May, Miller had pleaded guilty to charges of abduction, sexual assault, and watching films in the presence of a child under the age of 13 and possessing 242 images of a bad nature, we'll just say. The Court of Appeal in Edinburgh confirmed on Friday that Miller has been granted leave to appeal the sentence. The appeal hearing will take place on December the 5th. Hopefully the court at that appeal will give him a further harsher sentence. I think that everyone in the world, effectively every decent person in the world, will accept that 20 years in prison and 8 years on licence is far too mild for a man that did the things he did. And oh look, here's a picture of him dressed as a pretendy Wendy. And they always do that sort of thing, don't they? They either put their chin down or hold their hand up. They always put their head at a tilt. It's the optimum tilt angle. It hides the madam's apple. With their big manly hands. They do that because they know that deep down they're not women. They never will be women. They'd love to have been a woman, but you know what? Nature didn't make them that way, as Blur said. Anyway, sentencing Miller on October the 18th, Judge Lord Arthurson described Miller's crimes as brazen and chilling and uniquely appalling. He said the offences were abhorrent crimes of the utmost deviance and depravity, he said, which were the realisation of every child's nightmare. The court was told Miller is transitioning into a woman, and transitioning is the term they use to say not ever going to cut his cock off. Well, hopefully somebody in prison does transition him, does cut it off, and does shove it all the way down his disgusting, depraved throat and make him swallow his own words, as it were. I'm not saying that anyone should do it. I'm just saying that perhaps it might happen. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, the girl eventually managed to dial 999 after she was repeatedly abused, touched, forced to watch stuff. And Miller, who was wearing women's underwear at the time, was asleep. After his arrest, 3 laptops were seized from the property and a total of 242 indecent images were found. Miller, who'd run a butcher's shop, had been placed on the sex offenders register. He's been held in a male prison following the row over the jailing of transgender Ara of Women Isla Bryson, who was sent to a female prison. Bryson was later moved to the male estate. And let's hope that the men in whatever hellhole he's staying treat him accordingly. Do unto him what he would do to them. And do it quickly. I don't ever want to hear from this disgusting piece of human filth again. I hope on the 5th of December he loses his appeal and the judge gives him an extra 30 years. If only we could have hard labour. If only we could bring back the rope, I would willingly pull the lever. And I'm sure there'd be a queue of people, decent people, honest, open people, who would happily queue up to pull that lever as well. Millions of us, I think. I think it's time we had a referendum on that particular form of punishment, because I guarantee it would be back. Anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you very much. I'm going to come up, we'll finish the video, and we'll leave this piece of shit to fester in his cell, and let's hope that the judge agrees with us. Coming up. So in a couple of weeks, this man is going to stand there and he's going to cause an awful lot of problems for the SNP. Which way will the court go? Will they say he should be allowed to appeal and they reduce his sentence, which is like saying because he was dressed as a woman, it was fine? Or do they increase his sentence, in which saying because he was dressed as a woman, that makes it worse? Well, I would hate to be a member of the SNP cabinet trying to pick the bones out of this one. It's not a good look. It's not a good decision. And either way, it's going to be embarrassing. Which way will the court go? Perhaps he should not have been given his grant to appeal. But then every day, you're allowed your day in court. I suppose that's one of the things we have to put up with. But hopefully the crime will be made worse. Let's hope the judge says it was far too lenient an appeal in the first place, or far too lenient a sentence in the first place, and that this appeal will indeed increase his sentence. This has happened before, and hopefully it will happen this time. Who knows? Anyway, we shall keep an eye on it, and in about 2 weeks' time we shall have an answer. Till then, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.